Srimate Bhakti Swami Chinamine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pachari Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pasya Chadeshatari Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Srila Prabhupada. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada. Jai Jai Prabhupada, 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 Jai Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Hare Sri Bhakti Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada ki Jai Vishnu Bhavan Sabharaj Guitar Sto Dance of the Sisi Man Bhakti Siddhanta Sarji Thakur Prabhupada ki Go Premanandi. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshu Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta-vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So you would think this is a very sad day, the celebration of the disappearance of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. It was around 7:15 or so in Vrindavan, India, in November in 1977. I had just turned 27 years old. And at least for my life in devotional service, that was a little over 4 years of Srila Prabhupada's presence physically. Of course, I was fortunate enough to be in locations where Srila Prabhupada visited frequently, New York and Los Angeles. Yet, upon his departure, it was quite a traumatic experience. Because you have to understand that Srila Prabhupada had been through many, you would say, close calls with leaving this world. And so, many of us thought somehow or other another miracle will happen. Even though Prabhupada said that such hopes were fanatical, that the body has its natural finish. Even the spiritualized body doesn't go on forever. The spiritual body has no beginning and no end, but even the spiritualized body, the iron rod, in the fire is not fire, but it can act like fire. So that physical form, the vapu, of Srila Prabhupada came to an end. I realized finally that was going to happen a few days, maybe 2 days before his departure, because I was in Los Angeles producing his books and heading up the English department on site. And so I got the last chapter from Srila Prabhupada, the 13th chapter of the 10th canto, on my desk, the manuscript, before it was edited. And as I read it, I had the distinct understanding that this would be the last chapter of the Bhaktivedanta purports. And sure enough, 2 days later, the announcement came from India that Srila Prabhupada had departed. Many devotees suddenly burst out crying. I was too stunned to say anything. So normally, when you experience the loss, especially of the most important person in your life, there's devastation. But we all felt the increased presence of Krishna. Krishna doesn't abandon his devotees. Of course, in the physical absence of the Father, the sons go through some difficulties. But somehow or other, by clinging to Srila Prabhupada's instructions, so many obstacles were traversed. Srila Prabhupada gave his disciples the firm instructions so many times to cooperate, which is a great austerity. More austere than controlling the senses is cooperating. Because we're all individuals, as I explained them in Auckland during Prabhupada's Vyasa Puja celebration. We all are individuals and we don't agree with one another. But because of the order of the Father, we push on together. And that order of the Father, the order of the spiritual master, is all important. So this is unity and diversity. The diversity is certainly there. Prabhupada's disciples are individuals. And as you become more spiritually advanced, your spiritual individuality becomes more and more prominent. But because the order of Srila Prabhupada overrides everything, we try to stick it out together through thick and thin. So again, ordinarily, the anniversary of the departure of anyone dear to you, want to speak of the most dear person, would be an occasion of grief. But the material world means a place of appearing and disappearing. But for Krishna's devotee, the disappearance is not the end. As Srila Prabhupada said about the disappearance of his own spiritual master, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. He left this earth to go somewhere else to do the same thing, spreading Krishna's glories. The example given is the sun. What happens when the sun sets at night? Is the sun finished? No. The sun will rise again in the morning. Similarly, the disappearance of such an extraordinary devotee as Srila Prabhupada is not the end. Simply, according to Krishna's desire, he'll go somewhere else to continue the same mission. So you might say, what about Goloka Vrindavan? Isn't Srila Prabhupada in Goloka Vrindavan? Always. Anyone who is rendering pure devotional service and chanting the holy name purely does not dwell within this universe. Just like you get the example in 3rd canto Bhagavatam, when Vidura asked Uddhava questions about Krishna. This is after Krishna had left the ordinary vision of this world. And Uddhava did not respond for several minutes. Why? Because Vidura's questions about Krishna propelled Uddhava to Goloka Vrindavan. His consciousness left this world, and he was in Goloka Vrindavan simultaneously. The acharyas point out in their commentary that while Uddhava's consciousness is absorbed with Krishna in Goloka Vrindavan, Krishna told him, I think you better go back and answer Vidura's questions. So Srila Prabhupada undoubtedly was a resident of the Loka Vrindavan. Sometimes devotees ask, what was it like to be in Srila Prabhupada's presence? You're in the presence of someone out of this world. That's what I remember the most. Someone who was not a resident of this world. He came to do a mission appointed by Krishna and his spiritual master. And he left to continue doing the same. Through devotional service, you're always with Krishna. Never mind, the body comes, the body goes. But through devotional service, through pure chanting and hearing about Krishna, you're always with Krishna in the spiritual world. That is the peak potential of bhakti. Why doesn't everyone realize that peak potential? Because of offenses while chanting, because of offenses regarding the deity. You take Krishna's name to be different from Krishna. You take the deity to be the representative of Krishna rather than Krishna himself. Then there are offenses to devotees. So all that combines to prevent you from experiencing how just by rendering devotional service and chanting Hare Krishna, you are with Krishna. The fact is that separation from Krishna is impossible. But we've encased ourselves in material consciousness, which means we don't see the spiritual reality. As you perform devotional service, as you hear and chant about Krishna, especially in the association of sincere devotees, your spiritual senses develop. As the verse often quoted says, Atat Sri Krishna Namadi Nabhave Kayamindra. You cannot experience the name, form, qualities, and pastimes of Krishna with your material senses. But by engaging in devotional service, especially beginning with the tongue chanting, the spiritual reality gradually becomes known to you. How does it become known to you? Because your senses are slowly becoming spiritualized. As long as you simply rely on your dull material senses, you can't understand the spiritual reality. What to speak of experience it. But as you engage in the Bhakti Yoga process, your senses gradually become spiritual, just like the iron rod, when inserted into the fire, slowly becomes hot, hotter, hottest, and at its peak, it can act. The iron rod can act just like fire, even though it's not fire. So this is the mystery of Bhakti Yoga. And the mystery is revealed by Krishna in Bhagavad Gita. But let us not underestimate or overlook our need to become purified if we want to go deeper into bhakti. So the disappearance of Srila Prabhupada forced his disciples to go deeper. Otherwise, how could they survive? For me, Srila Prabhupada was the best father, the real father, much more than my biological father. the most profound, wisest, and out-of-this-world person I had never seen or heard from. And the most practical. Many devotees have commented that Srila Prabhupada was the most down-to-earth, practical person they ever met. You probably wouldn't think like that. How could someone be out of this world, or an emissary from the spiritual world, and yet be the most down-to-earth and practical person? This was astounding. I remember when Prabhupada walked into my office at the BBT in Los Angeles. I was staring at his feet because I had read in the second canto of Bhagavatam that you, just as you approach the deity by first looking at the feet, similarly you approach a saintly person by first looking at the feet. So I was looking at his feet, and then I raised my gaze, and he's looking around at my office, and he was commenting, this used to be a kitchen before it was remodeled. And then he kind of looked me over from head to foot and gave, as I often say, the only sound I ever heard directly from Srila Prabhupada, to me personally, just long, drawn out, I can't imitate. So I often ask devotees, what would you do if that was the only sound you ever heard from your guru? I say, what is this? Just imagine you all throwing pots at me and throwing shoes at me. The only vibration I ever said to Krishna Gopinath or Radha Prasad was, come on, we gotta do better than that. Let's hear some talk. Let's hear some words. Some emotions, right? So, that's the point I want to emphasize, that Srila Prabhupada was clearly from out of this world. Due to his complete dedication to the order of his spiritual master, so I'd like to read to you his concluding words once he finished translating and commenting on Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. Just a week ago was the anniversary, November 10th, 1974. That's when Chaitanya Charitamrita was finished from Srila Prabhupada. But as you know, it wasn't finished with the book production, and he was very upset about that. The BBT was so far behind. So one devotee was asking me today, what was it like when suddenly your health collapsed after you were tasting the book distribution glories in New York? What was it like when your health totally collapsed? As I've explained before, I would lay on the floor coughing all day and then get up, go out on book distribution for 2 hours, come back and lay on the floor and cough more. Devotees kept telling me, it looks like you have to change services. I said, no, I will never give up book distribution. And I remember, finally, when I got the point, I was at a big bus terminal. And there was a person who walked by me 1 meter away, and I had to pray to Krishna for the strength to make it across that 1 meter distance and hand the person the Bhagavatam. And the person took it. And I knew that's it for you. So then I mentioned to some devotees at the BBT that, yeah, I can do literary work. What? You can do literary work? You gotta go to Los Angeles right away. That's the way it was back then. For service, you just took off, got into it right away. No hesitation. Go find a suitcase somewhere. The ashram had a room where all kinds of items were kept of persons who had joined the ashram, and so it's called the merge. Hey, is there an old suitcase of the merge? Yeah, we got one for you. So you put your 2 dhotis and 2 kurtas in the suitcase. And then off to Los Angeles. About 30 devotees on the plane. Arriving just in time for Prabhupada to start shaking the earth. Where are my books? Where are my books? So as I often explain, the impossible marathon, which even today no one can figure out how it was completed. It's beyond all logic and reason. Beyond all managemental understanding. The leaders of the BBT, in response to Prabhupada's marked displeasure, they huddled, and the next morning came back with a plan to increase by 4 times the speed of the book production. And Prabhupada said, no, I want all the books in 2 months, plus 5th canto. You have to understand how inconceivable that was. Made no material sense at all. But you couldn't say that back then. You just tremble in your shoes and, oh my God, did I hear that? And Prabhupada was so emphatic. I want all Chaitanya Charitamrita and the 5th canto in 2 months, otherwise you all are rascals. It's a very heavy word to say in India. In the West it's no big deal, but in India, it means you're the lowest creature. So he said it in a way that I cut you off. So everyone just panicked. So finally, stunned, the devotees decided, I guess we gotta do this. It doesn't make any sense. It's like if I said, Krishna Prasad, in 2 months I want everything built up at Nukulina. 2 months, otherwise you're finished. Probably Radha Prasad would run me over with a car. It made no sense at all. That's the point I'm trying to convey. So when you all often hear Srila Prabhupada here, certainly about his compassion, his kindness, his gentleness, his sensitivity, able to inspire everyone, I don't think you hear about this side. It made no sense logically from the managemental practical point of view. It made no sense. But once the devotees put their mind to executing the order, it's like an extraordinary, inconceivable energy descended. And we did the most impossible tasks. The paintings, some of the paintings that you see in Chaitanya Charitamrita, they were done not by one artist. You know, artists are very attached, whether they're musicians or painters or sculptors. They're very attached to their productions, very temperamental. Do we have any artists here? Prananda, are you an artist? No. Musician. Artist. They're very... So the artists, they're painting 12 hours a day on these paintings you see in Chaitanya Charitamrita. And sometimes while they were painting, they would doze off because they were painting all night. And then while they dozed off, another artist would come along and finish the painting, which for an artist is like, it's horrible. It's my painting, my artistic production. What do you think, Parananda? You make a musical composition and doze off, and then someone comes along and finishes it all, and that's it. It's gone into production. That's what happened. My service was an austerity of reading Chaitanya Charitamrita 12 hours a day, but reading to spot any mistakes. So it's like taking a physics examination for 12 hours every day. You had to concentrate, not just reading to enjoy, reading to find out any mistakes, grammatical mistakes, things missing. Started. We were allowed to go to Mangalarti, and you start 8 o'clock in the morning, you go to 8 o'clock at night. Just reading, scrutinizing, analyzing. So it was like a inconceivable energy descended. And gradually the devotees started to realize this is possible, it's doable. Once we got out of being stunned. So it was at that start of that marathon that Prabhupada came into my office. Some devotees, they introduced me to Prabhupada. Prabhupada, do you know what university this boy comes from? And I'm looking at Prabhupada's feet and praying, I'm such a fallen wretch, don't listen to them. So indeed, Prabhupada's order was fulfilled. He won all the books by his Vyasa Puja, and he was in Vrindavan at the Krishna Balaram Mandir for his Vyasa Puja. And so a devotee went to the printer, which was in kind of the Tennessee, it's in state in the more or less eastern central part of the USA. That's where the printer was. So the devotee went and got advanced copies, hot off the press, and then went to New York and flew from New York to Delhi, and then got a taxi from Delhi to Vrindavan, and walked into the Krishna Balaram Mandir just when Prabhupada was climbing off his Vyasasan to go to his room after the Vyasa Puja ceremony. So the devotee followed Prabhupada into his room. The devotee was triumphant. We've done the impossible. We have fulfilled Srila Prabhupada's desire. So Prabhupada sat down on his cushion in his room, and the devotee paid his dandavats. And then presented the book to Prabhupada. Here is the last book, the 17th volume. Prabhupada took the book. You have promised before the Vyasa Puja ceremony, now it is after. What would you have done if you got that kind of reaction? You just show complete detachment, like, what's the big deal? You haven't done anything great. You're supposed to have given me the book before the Vyasa Puja ceremony. You're late, you came after. What would you have done? You just forget this, I'm out of here. Right? What kind of guru is this? That was it. Until nighttime, when he wrote the famous letter. You might have seen it on a wall in where I stay at New Varshnava. He wrote the famous letter, by this effort, you will all go back to Godhead. So Srila Prabhupada was very demanding on behalf of Krishna, not for himself, but for Krishna. So November 10th, 1974 was when the Chaitanya Charitamrita was completed in translation and commentary by Srila Prabhupada. It was not completed in printing until September of 1975. So let's go through these concluding words. Today, Sunday, November 10th, 1974, corresponding to the 10th of Kartika, Chaitanya era 488, the 11th day of the dark fortnight, the Rama Ekadasi. We have now finished the English translation of Sri Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami's Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. In accordance with the authorized order of His Divine Grace, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Goswami Maharaj, my beloved eternal spiritual master, guide, and friend. Sometimes devotees wonder about that. How can the Guru be your friend? This is stated in 7th canto, Brahmachari Guru Kule Pasandanta Gurohitam. Not a friend of yours that you can slap on the back like a mate, but your friendship, you're friendly with the mission of the Guru. That's how you show your friendship. My beloved eternal spiritual master, guide, and friend. Friendship in Bhakti is not like mundane friendship. Mundane friends, you expect they'll agree with you. Your enemies will be their enemies. They'll take on all your gripes and grievances. Yeah, you're right. Why did they do that to you? Yeah, that's what friends are for. Right? They believe your version no matter what. Or at least they say they do. But friendship on the spiritual platform is not like that. So this is very interesting. I always found it. How Prabhupada says, my beloved eternal spiritual master, guide, and friend. There are friendly relations in Bhakti, even between guru and disciple, but it's not mundane friendship based on mundane sense gratification. You make me feel good, I make you feel good. It's camaraderie in serving Krishna for Krishna's pleasure. We'll continue. Although, according to material vision, His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Jaji Thakur passed away from this material world on the last day of December 1936, I still consider His Divine Grace to be always present with me by His Vani, His words. So notice, according to material vision, He's gone. But the spiritual reality is something else. The material reality is a shadow, a reflection. What is the actual reality? He's not gone. He's present another way. So Prabhupada writes, I still consider His Divine Grace to be always present with me by His Vani, His words. There are two ways of association, by Vani and by Vapu. Vani means words, and Vapu means physical presence. Physical presence is sometimes appreciable and sometimes not. But Vani continues to exist eternally. Otherwise, how could Prabhupada's disciples go on if there was nothing enduring, if everything had disappeared? I remember I had the service of filing Srila Prabhupada's correspondence, both letters to him and letters from him, for my Los Angeles days. And I saw one letter where Prabhupada was explaining the Vapu, the physical association of the Guru, is for neophytes. So I thought, well, I guess I'm always going to be a neophyte, because that's what I want. The point is not that you neglect the physical association. You get all that you can get. But keep in mind, the most important association is through the Vani, the instruction. Sometimes devotees mistakenly think, well, the Vapu, the form, the physical association, it's not so important, so therefore. That's incorrect. It's just that the body will never go away as long as you are meditating on the instructions of the Guru. I always marvel how, if I'm speaking somewhere in, let's say, Auckland, some devotee who lives on the other side of the city of Auckland will say, oh, traffic is too intense. No point in me trying to go here, Guru Maharaj. Then I go to, like, Ukraine, and before the war started, devotees from Siberia would take a 3-day train ride from Siberia all the way to Ukraine, and in 3 days back. Yet when I come to New Zealand, oh, Guru Maharaj, I heard you were giving class, but it takes a while to come from, South Auckland over to New Maharaj. Even now, just a couple weeks ago, I got a letter from disciples in Russia. Please, we haven't seen you in years now. Can you tell us when you're going to be in Mayapur? We'll make a special trip to Mayapur. Will we be able to be with you? Will we be able to see you? So they know the body is more important, but at the same time they correctly understand. You get as much of the vapu as you can. And don't complain you don't get more. Physical presence is sometimes appreciable and sometimes not. But Vani continues to exist eternally. That's what you have to assimilate and understand if you want to advance beyond the neophyte stage. So Prabhupada continues. Therefore, we must take advantage of the Vani, not the physical presence. The Bhagavad Gita, for example, is the Vani of Lord Krishna. Although Krishna was personally present 5,000 years ago and is no longer physically present from the materialistic point of view, the Bhagavad Gita continues. So sometimes Srila Prabhupada would tell reporters, they'd ask him, what's going to happen to this, your movement after you leave? He said, I will always be present in my books. So that is for you all to realize. That's what Srila Prabhupada is giving to you as his presence. And he said that's the best way to be with him, to experience him, through his books. He said his books are better than him, meaning they are a better way of associating with him than even physically. Everything I wanted to say is in my books. He even said on several occasions that, what if all the devotees disappear, all the leaders disappear, all the pujaris disappear, and that's it? They all went into Maya, no more Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada said that because my books have been distributed everywhere, someone somewhere will read my books and know exactly how to restart the Hare Krishna movement. So that's the best insurance policy. In this connection, we may call to memory the time when I was fortunate enough to meet His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. He's talking about Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Sometime in the year 1922, Srila Prabhupada had come to Calcutta from Sridham, Mayapur to start the missionary activities of the Gaudiya Math. He was sitting in a house at Ultadanga when, through the inducement of an intimate friend, the late Sriman Narendranath Mulik, I had the opportunity to meet His Divine Grace for the first time. You remember, Srila Prabhupada didn't want to go. So I've seen so many of these sadhus, they're all quacks, they're all fakers, but his friend coerced him. This one is for real, you've got to see him. I had the opportunity to meet His Divine Grace for the first time. I do not remember the actual date of the meeting, but at that time I was one of the managers of Dr. Bose's laboratory in Calcutta. I was a newly married young man, addicted to Gandhi's movement. That means he's immersed in politics. Sovereignty, freedom from the British. Addicted to Gandhi's movement and dressed in khadi, that means plain cotton cloth that Gandhi told everyone, wear. Don't buy cloth from the British and the arrangement the British have in India. Wear simple cloth, homespun cloth as a protest. Fortunately, even at our first meeting, His Divine Grace advised me to preach the cult of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in English in the Western countries. Prabhupada's using the word cult in a positive way. Don't go telling your parents, Guru Dev advised me to preach the cult of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. This is old English. Because at that time, I was a complete nationalist, a follower of Mahatma Gandhi's. I submitted to His Divine Grace that unless our country were freed from foreign subjugation, no one would hear the message of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu seriously. Of course, we had some argument on the subject. But at last I was defeated and convinced that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's message is the only panacea for suffering humanity. The same thing happened to me. From my university studies, I already knew that no material solution would suffice for solving humanity's problems. I didn't know what would. I just thought it's hopeless. It's a crazy world. Pointless. No point in doing anything. It's all madness. But then by reading Prabhupada's books, I became convinced this is the only solution for suffering humanity. He continues, I was also convinced that the message of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was then in the hands of a very expert devotee, and that surely the message of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would spread all over the world. I could not, however, immediately take up his instructions to preach, but I took his words very seriously and was always thinking of how to execute his order, although I was quite unfit to do so. So he met Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur in 1922. He didn't take initiation until maybe 12 or 13 years later. But he had the real initiation. He had taken the mission of the Guru, the instruction of his Guru into his heart. That's the real initiation. As you may notice, there are disciples formally, and then there are real disciples. That's the way it's always going to be. There are disciples in name only, and then there are disciples who are active in the core of their heart. In this way, I passed my life as a householder until 1950. That's like 27 years. How many? Since he first heard from Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, that is 28 years. When he retired from family life as a vanaprastha. With no companion, I loitered here and there until 1958, when I took sannyas. Then I was completely ready to discharge the order of my spiritual master. So from 1922 until 1958, he didn't consider himself to be executing the order of his Guru, but he was always thinking about it. And during the time of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta had told godbrothers, because Prabhupada was living outside as an independent householder. He would go to the temple all the time, but he was a householder, making money, children, wife. So some of the sannyasi disciples of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur told him, this Abhay, called Abhay Babu, he's very devotional, very dedicated. Maybe we should try to engage him in some service in the temple. And Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur said, no, 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 let him be. In time, he will do the needful. So it was like Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur planting a time bomb. Just let it be. In time, it will explode. And of course, before Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur disappeared from this world, he confided in our Srila Prabhupada that since I've built so many temples, there's so much quarreling and fighting. Who gets this room? Who gets that room? Who gets this opulent place to live in the temple? Who gets that opulent place? He said, I wish I would just sell it all and print books. So that's where Srila Prabhupada got his mission of printing and distributing books. His spiritual master told him, book distribution is more important. I could sell all these opulent temples in India and just publish and print books. Previously, in 1936, just before His Divine Grace passed away at Jagannath Puri, I wrote him a letter asking what I could do to serve him. That's what a real disciple does. In reply, he wrote me a letter dated 13th December 1936. That's like just over 2 weeks before the disappearance of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. He wrote me a letter ordering me in the same way to preach in English the cult of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, as I had heard it from him. After he passed away, I started a fortnightly magazine, Back to Godhead, sometime in 1944, and tried to spread the cult of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu through this magazine. After I took sannyas, you know how he left home in 1950, became a vanaprastha, and 1958, he took sannyas. He left home. His wife was a pious Hindu. Oh, neophyte Vaishnavi. But she wasn't into Prabhupada's devotional service. She wasn't into his preaching. Prabhupada would have like bhakti gatherings at the home, and she would just go hide upstairs. So her devotional output was very meager. So the culmination came when Prabhupada had gone off on a business trip, because he was always supporting the family. He did his family duty. That's one thing devotees may not understand. He didn't just leave home irresponsibly. He left home according to the Vedic standard. He had done his dash. They had children. He was in his 50s. That's it. It's hard to understand these days. I think I was talking to Rasyatra Devi Dasi, and she said, this vanaprastha is very difficult to understand. The first 30 years of your marriage, you're practically knocking each other's heads off every day. And then just when smooth sailing comes, then you gotta leave. What is this? So Srila Prabhupada did his duty according to the Varnashram system. He was responsible. He was making money as much as he could for the family. But his wife was kind of a formula Vaishnavi, just externally doing all the rituals. So Prabhupada continued to support the families. They had 3 children, I believe. And you know the culmination when everything exploded. He came back from a business trip and was searching the house for his worshipable Srimad Bhagavatam volume. His wife, he had already given her, before this, he had given her an ultimatum. Because she was a tea drinker. You might say, what's the big deal, a tea drinker? A lot of worse things she could have been. But you're looking at it from the Kali Yuga Western standard. So Prabhupada said to her one day, after many years of marriage and children and all that, he said to her, look, it's either the tea or me. And she just said, I'll take the tea. Maybe she didn't mean it seriously or understand the impact, but Prabhupada took it very seriously. Especially when he came home from a business trip looking for his sacred volume of Srimad Bhagavatam, and he asked her, where is it? And she said, oh, I took it to the market and traded it for some tea biscuits. At that point, that's when Prabhupada disappeared from the home. After I took sannyas, a well-wishing friend suggested that I write books instead of magazines. Magazines, he said, might be thrown away, but books remain perpetually. Then I attempted to write Srimad Bhagavatam. Before that, when I was a householder, I had written on Srimad Bhagavad Gita and had completed about 1,100 pages, 1,100 pages. But somehow or other the manuscript was stolen. What would you have done? 1,100 pages you had written? And then it's gone? You'd have just said, forget this. In any case, when I had published Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, in 3 volumes in India, I thought of going to the USA. By the mercy of His divine grace, I was able to come to New York on September 17, 1965. I was just shy of my 15th birthday in September of 1965, and I just started boarding school in the mountains of New Hampshire with the richest kids in North America. I had no idea that just as I'm starting school there, the greatest benediction had arrived in New York City. Since then, I have translated many books, including Srimad Bhagavatam, the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Teachings of Lord Chaitanya, a summary, and many others. In the meantime, I was induced to translate Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita and publish it in an elaborate version. In his leisure time in later life, His Divine Grace Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur would simply read Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. It was his favorite book. Can you visualize that kind of consciousness? It's time to relax. Chaitanya Charitamrita. What do you do when it's time to relax? Social media, YouTube. But now you're hearing how the greatest devotees relax. some free moments, let me read Chaitanya Charitamrita. It was his favorite book. He used to say that there would be a time when foreigners would learn the Bengali language to read the Chaitanya Charitamrita. The work on this translation began about 18 months ago, way back in 1973. Now, by the grace of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and His Divine Grace Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, it is finished. In this connection, I have to thank my American disciples, especially Sriman Pradumya Das Adhikari, Sriman Nitai Das Adhikari, Sriman Jayadvaita Das Brahmachari, and many other boys and girls who are sincerely helping me in writing, editing, and publishing all these literatures. When he wrote this note in November of 1974, I was still blissfully doing book distribution, never thinking that I would do anything different. And it was the next month, in December 1974, when I made my inconceivable breakthrough of practically doing no books to the books flying out of my hand. So there was no way after that I was thinking of doing anything else. But then, a few months later is when Prabhupada started beating the drum. Where are my books? Where are my books? We'll continue. I think that His Divine Grace, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, is always seeing my activities and guiding me within my heart by His words. This is what we call Bhakti mysticism. It's the real thing. He's always seeing my activities and guiding me within my heart by His words. As it is said in Srimad Bhagavatam, Tene Brahmarida Yadadi Kavaye. Spiritual inspiration comes from within the heart, wherein the Supreme Personality of Godhead, in His Paramatma feature, is always sitting with all devotees and associates. It is to be admitted that whatever translation work I've done is through the inspiration of my spiritual master, because personally I am most insignificant and incompetent to do this materially impossible work. I do not think myself a very learned scholar, but I have full faith in the service of my spiritual master, His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. If there is any credit to my activities of translating, it is all due to His Divine Grace. Now focus on this part especially. Certainly, if His Divine Grace were physically present at this time, it would have been a great occasion for jubilation. But even though He's not physically present, I am confident that He is very much pleased by this work of translation. He was very fond of seeing many books published to spread the Krishna consciousness movement. Therefore, our society, the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, has been formed to execute the order of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. It is my wish that devotees of Lord Chaitanya all over the world enjoy this translation. Who has read Chaitanya Charitamrita here? Are you enjoying the translation? Yes. In your leisure time? And I'm glad to express my gratitude to the learned men in the Western countries who are so pleased with my work that they are ordering in advance all my books that will be published in the future. On this occasion, therefore, I request my disciples who are determined to help me in this work to continue their cooperation fully. So that philosophers, scholars, religionists, and people in general all over the world will benefit by reading our transcendental literatures such as Srimad Bhagavatam and Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports to Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, dated November 10th, 1974, at the Bhaktivedanta Book Trust, Hare Krishna Land, Juhu, Bombay. All right, we have time for a few questions if you have any.